Welcome back to China in the Hill, your essential weekly update on the U.S. China news and policy debates unfolding in Washington, D.C. and beyond. It's Tuesday, December 9th, and we're here to break down the latest in U.S. China relations, from a slate of bills spanning export controls to education, to a new report on the workforce decline of the U.S. Foreign Service. Let's get into it. This week, a wide range of China and tech-related legislation was introduced, spanning export controls, cybersecurity, sanctions, and education. In the Senate, lawmakers introduced several measures aimed at tightening technology security. The Chip Equipment Quality, Usefulness, and Integrity Protection Act would bar purchases of certain semiconductor manufacturing equipment from foreign adversaries, while the Secure and Feasible Exports of Chips Act seeks to block export licenses for advanced chips to those same countries. Other tech-focused bills would require new strategies for intelligence coordination on emerging technologies, upgrade federal systems to post-quantum cryptography, and prohibit the purchase of solar panels manufactured in China. In science and technology innovation, lawmakers introduced bills to create an Independence Investment Fund to support U.S. companies working in critical and emerging technologies, strengthened the Technology Modernization Fund, and codified the administration's Genesis mission on science and innovation. In the House, members unveiled several bills expanding sanctions authorities. New proposals would target illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing linked to foreign persons and vessels, intellectual property theft tied to PRC-linked persons and sectors, as well as a Senate bill targeting international drug trafficking networks, with particular focus on fentanyl precursors originating from PRC-based companies. Congress is also turning attention to education and influence concerns. A House resolution sets floor procedures for bills restricting PRC funding or contracts with U.S. K-12 schools and increasing transparency around foreign influence. Another bill would require reporting on participants in U.S. educational and cultural exchange programs. Additional legislation would revise definitions under the Export Control Reform Act, impose visa restrictions on certain PRC nationals, and provide direct payments to U.S. specialty crop growers affected by tariff burdens. Finally, a separate resolution commemorates Jimmy Lai's 78th birthday, calling for his release and that of other Hong Kong democracy advocates. This Monday, President Trump announced that his administration would allow Nvidia to sell its Hopper 200 chips to approved commercial customers in China, arguing the move would support U.S. manufacturing and jobs. While the H200 is not Nvidia's most advanced processor, it remains significant for AI development, and the decision comes amid ongoing concerns over China's access to cutting-edge semiconductors. A bipartisan group of senators criticized the move, introducing new legislation last week to prevent the Trump administration from easing export controls on advanced AI chips for China. The bill, known as the Safe Chips Act, would require the Commerce Department to deny license requests from buyers in China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea for the next 30 months, and mandate congressional briefings before any future rule changes. Supporters of the measure argue that broader access to these chips could aid China's military modernization, expand cyber operations, and bolster its domestic manufacturing sector. They also noted that Chinese AI firm DeepSeek has publicly cited limited access to advanced U.S. semiconductors as their biggest challenge in competing with U.S. AI companies such as OpenAI and Google. In other news, the White House released its new national security strategy on Friday, signaling a notably softer approach to competition with Beijing and marking a clear departure from the Biden and first Trump administration's framing of China as the U.S.'s primary foreign policy challenge. The document maintains the language of strategic competition when discussing Taiwan's status, but places far greater emphasis on economics and trade, while downplaying ideological differences between the two countries. Unlike the 2022 National Security Strategy document, this new strategy mentions China only a handful of times, and largely in economic contexts. It also drops Biden-era language stating that the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence, and softens earlier wording that emphasized opposition to any unilateral changes to the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. Congress has finalized this year's National Defense Authorization Act, adding several new China-focused technology measures while leaving other major proposals unresolved. If passed, the bill imposes new restrictions on U.S. investments on advanced technologies in China and other countries of concern, requiring companies and individuals to notify the administration and allowing the president to block certain deals. Lawmakers also amended the NDAA to include the Biosecure Act, which bars federal agencies from contracting with biotechnology firms linked to China, a measure supporters say will help protect U.S. data. Other tech provisions were cut. Lawmakers dropped a proposal to preempt state AI laws after Republicans split over the issue, despite support from President Trump. They also removed the GAIN AI Act, which would have required chip makers to give U.S. buyers priority before exporting chips to China. With key debates unresolved, some issues have already been pushed to next year. A bipartisan group of senators introduced the Safe Chips Act to lock in current export controls and block licenses for more advanced AI chips for 2.5 years. Meanwhile, a new Washington Post intelligence report says the Trump administration is launching a formal policy process led by Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio to develop recommendations on AI diffusion and semiconductor export controls, after Congress declined to include them in the final bill. A new report from the American Foreign Service Association warns that the U.S. Foreign Service is undergoing its most serious workforce decline in decades. According to AFSA, as many as 1 in 4 career diplomats have left or been removed since January, and 98% of surveyed officers say morale has deteriorated significantly. The report describes the widespread budget cuts, hiring freezes, and reorganizations across foreign affairs agencies, which respondents say are delaying or disrupting core diplomatic work overseas. 86% of surveyed respondents said that recent changes have made it harder to advance U.S. foreign policy objectives. AFSA cautions that the rapid loss of personnel and institutional capacity is creating operational risks at a time of rising global tensions. Nearly 1/3 of active duty diplomats reported that they are reconsidering their future in the State Department. The report urges both Congress and the administration to stabilize staffing, restore training pipelines, and reaffirm the nonpartisan role of the Foreign Service. Last week, President Trump signed the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act, which will require the State Department to regularly review U.S. engagement with Taiwan and identify opportunities to ease long-standing restrictions. According to the White House, the act permanently extends existing requirements for the Department of State to review and report on its guidance. A congressional summary says the mandated reviews must examine Taiwan's governance through free and fair elections and identify opportunities and plans to lift self-imposed restrictions on relations with Taiwan. These reviews would be required at least every 5 years. Since taking office, President Trump has pushed Taiwan to raise its defense spending and recently approved sales of fighter jet parts and an air defense system. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te's administration welcomed the legislation, saying that this bill affirms the value of U.S.-Taiwan exchanges and reflects shared democratic principles. And that's all for this week's edition of China in the Hill. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe to our Substack for the latest updates, full transcripts, and bonus content. Link in the description. For more from the National Committee, check out our other podcast episodes wherever you listen, or visit our YouTube channel for in-depth discussions, interviews, and analysis. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.